Welcome to the T2 Hubcast. Join Martin, Dave, Spencer and guests as they discuss all things personal and professional development. The T2 Hubcast, brought to you by the People Performance People.
So welcome to another T2 Hubcast. It's me, Martin Johnson, and
Dave Pendleton.
Dave. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much.
Welcome to my abode, my Hubcast room.
Unfamiliar territory.
Yeah, absolutely. How are you? All right?
I'm good, man. You?
Good. Tiring week so far. Been to Dusseldorf, doing some leadership stuff, which was exciting. It was good. So yeah, the T2 juggernaut rolls on.
Indeed it does.
So Dave, you got me into the Hubcast room actually today. You said, Martin, let's go and record a Hubcast. I've got a few ideas. I want to get something off my chest around sales. So I said, what? And you said, it's about sales. It's not all about you.
No.
And I thought you was talking to me at first. And then I quickly realised you meant...
There was a look on your face. And...
Yeah. I instantly thought, yes, it is all about me, Dave.
Me.
Yeah, absolutely. You know me by now, right? But what you meant there is sales or salespeople. It's not all about you.
Yes.
So let me just bring you in instantly. What do you mean by that?
Well, I guess it's the culmination of quite a lot of years of being involved in sales training and sales consultancy and observing, lots and lots of salespeople from different environments at different levels and so on and so forth. And I guess coming to the conclusion that there's an awful lot of salespeople out there that do think it's about them. And I don't think it is.
Right. And when you say it's about them, what do you mean? Just give me an example. Do they talk about themselves too much? Have they got their own agendas? Is it that they're jumping straight into the pitch and the product too early? Or all of the above?
Yeah, I guess all of the above. Yeah. I mean, if ever I'm in a situation where I'm looking to buy something and I'm met by a sharp-suited, sharp haircutted...
haircutted?
Is that a real word?
You just made it up.
I don't know. It sounds all right. Sharp-shoed, coiffed, salesman with a strut, a bit like a peacock, an ornamental peacock in a country garden somewhere. I will swerve past that guy faster than my legs can move me because I know exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And it has done every single time from past experience.
And is that a sweeping statement? Is it unfair because maybe some people are told to dress like that by their companies, or is that just reinforcing the fact that we have these instant biases based on the perception of how people carry themselves, how they dress, etc., and the old stigma that comes with the on the road salesman or saleswoman is that it's a dapper dressing, tie or suit, blouse, whatever it might be, briefcase,
make an impact,
and I'm going to sell something to you.
Absolutely.
So there's what you're saying is there might be a stigma that comes with that.
Yeah, I think so. And I guess there maybe is a general statement about that, but I think it's a general statement based on quite a few years' experience in observing that kind of thing and that kind of situation. And certainly, dealing with people like that as well from my own experience.
So coming back to the point then, when you say it's not all about them or it's not all about you, you're trying to get them to understand that actually your major role or your major objective as a salesperson is to A, make a great impression, but B, flip it on its head and make it all about the customer from the outset. I don't actually know at this point, Mr. Customer or prospect, if I can help you. However, at the end of this initial conversation, then there may be an opportunity. But I'm absolutely focused on finding out who you are, what you need, what you might be working on, what you're struggling with, what the opportunity may be, and switch that around completely rather than go in with a preconceived agenda. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. Yeah. I guess you've hit the nail right on the head. For me, a salesperson is nothing more than a problem solver. It's as simple as that. My job is to help you solve problems in your world. And if I can't help you solve problems in your world, I need to back off.
Well, let me add one more into that because I love these live debates that we don't really plan, which we don't, right? But I used to think, I agree with you. When I was back in Gartner and we got heavily invested in sales training courses and we got trained in value selling, etc. And I always used to think as part of a salesperson, your job is to sell your product or service. However, in order to do that, you need to find out a problem the customer is facing and fix that problem.
Correct.
But then somebody introduced me to actually there's a second strand to that. Sometimes you're not helping the customer solve a problem. You may be, or your product or service may be helping them exploit an opportunity, which is not necessarily a problem right now. It's just a missed opportunity we're not currently exploiting, and your product or service can allow me to do that, right? So, but 90% of the time, the need to buy, to your point, comes from the fact that there is an issue that needs to be fixed.
Yeah, they're experiencing some kind of pain.
Yeah. So just to reiterate a salient point on this Hubcast already for the listeners, Dave's absolutely right. It's not all about you. You need to flip it on its head. Your responsibility, you're a problem solver. 90% of it is what is the customer's pain points or problems that they need to fix? And how does my product or service in turn help them achieve that? Or if there isn't a problem, does my product or service help them exploit an opportunity that they're not currently taking advantage of? Okay,
so it's
that makes sense so far.
Yeah, so it's an interesting scenario for you, I guess, just to maybe reinforce that point. How many salespeople have you come across in your sales life that have a very well rehearsed and very well defined sales pitch?
Well, do you remember? I said, do you remember back in the day, Dave?
My day was a little further back than your day.
It was exactly. That's why I'm saying it to you. But even when I first started out in sales, right, in probably the late 90s, early 2000s, when I first started in sales, there was the first thing you was taught was the elevator pitch.
Absolutely.
And the elevator pitch concept for people listening who will know is if you can't describe what your company does and the value of your product or service in the elevator from the ground floor to the third floor, then you don't know your product well enough.
Correct.
So the elevator pitch was this opening spiel of, hi, my name's Martin, this is who I work for, and this is what we sell. And that was the first thing that was taught to you as a salesperson. You opened up your conversations over the telephone or in meetings with the elevator pitch.
Absolutely.
And that's what you're coming at, isn't it?
Sure.
If we do that today, it's going to put more people off than engage people, right? It probably did back then, Dave.
It probably did.
Yeah,
it probably did. But did we know any better? I'm not sure if we did or we didn't. Maybe some people did, but most people didn't. You know, I mean, the very fact of once the salesperson is fortunate enough or skilled enough to be able to obtain a face-to-face meeting, it's always a handshake. Thanks for seeing me. I'm here today to talk to you about X. It's a perfectly normal opening statement for most salespeople, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But just that very statement, I'm here to talk to you about X, proves unequivocally that I'm here to talk to you about what I sell.
Yeah.
Which is me thinking it's all about me.
Now, let me not play devil's advocate, but let me put something into the mix. Assuming that there's been a pre-call or an exchange on email prior to the meeting, do you think some salespeople might think, well, we've already established that what we do and there's a need for it, therefore I can go straight into the pitch because we've already exchanged communication on email and you've accepted to see me, which means surely I'm here to pitch. I mean, I've got an answer to that because I think you might know 3% over email or on that initial call, but you still shouldn't fall into the pitch straight away. Even 90% of that initial meeting should be the mission of discovery, right? Mission of discovery being, let me get to the root of what's happening here. Let me find out who's involved. Let me find out who you currently use. Let me find out if you've actually thought of a solution already and what does that look like, right? Let me find out what the business outcomes you're trying to achieve as a result of this is, right? So what you're still saying is, even for people who say, well, I've already done that, Dave, on the pre-call, so I'm going in there to position my product or service, you're still saying, no, hold off.
I think you're absolutely right,
Yeah.
100%, because, I mean, how much dialogue can you share on a couple of scattered phone calls or an email, a couple of emails that bounce backwards and forwards? And do you know what? Generally, the face-to-face meeting, if you're looking to obtain one, generally won't happen the very next day. What else has happened in that person's world since you last spoken that you maybe need to discover? The pain that they were feeling before may have gotten worse, or the pain that they were feeling before may have gone away. So, I mean, I call it the 80-20 rule. I think in those early exchanges, it's hugely important for the customer to be talking 80% of the time and you to only contribute as and when necessary to a maximum percentage of about 20%.
That's interesting, like that. So as a gauge in meetings, in sales meetings, if you find yourself talking 80% of the time and the customer's only talking 20, then you're making it more about you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And flipped on its head, if the customer is speaking 80% of the time, roughly speaking, you're finding out all sorts of information, stuff that you may not have discovered on the earlier calls or the email exchanges. It's a great way to discover everything that they're willing to tell you about their world, their customer base, and start to explore those pain points, which I guess is another salient point that I want to cover. Because again, from my experience and even relatively recent experience in delivering sales training here at Trans2, with groups of people who sell face-to-face and on the telephone, just the very concepts that I try and explore with them when we start talking about uncovering pain points in the customer's world literally makes the face turn white and they start to shudder and say, crikey, why would I want to start talking to them about things that are causing them pain and headaches? If I'm putting them into a negative mood, surely they're going to switch off and not want to buy anything from me. And I say, absolutely not. I think it's completely the contrary. I think you've got to understand what's causing them pain. You've got to understand how you can help to take that pain away. And if you can't help to take that pain away right now, then you've got to shake hands, thank them for the time, and they will appreciate that much more than being led down some spurious garden path in an effort to try and sell them something rather than maintain a healthy and respectful working relationship that you can revisit later.
And if you're a salesperson listening to this, Dave's right. If there is nothing that's causing them pain right now, because you do get those meetings, remember what we said earlier on the Hubcast. Before you give up and say, right, well, I'll stay in touch and I'll come back to you when you're in trouble, right? It's not the classic way you want to live in. Can you help through your product or service potentially help this customer exploit an opportunity that they're not currently thinking of?
Maybe.
And that is not going straight back into a sales pitch. That's about then changing your line of questioning to say, okay, Mr. Prospect or Mrs. Prospect, this clearly isn't a pain point for you right now, or there's no true pain point you're experiencing. But what we often find with our customers is they can X, Y, or Z through using our products or services and just start asking questions, open up the dialogue around maybe, exploiting an opportunity rather than fixing a pain point if it's not there. But here's another one I want to say on this, Dave. When you get the extroverted, expressive customer, like let's say when a salesperson comes to see me, they literally at the start do the small talk, we introduce ourselves, and then I instantly go, right, let me just give you a little bit of background, where we are today, and I'll almost take that effort away from them. So I offer it up quite willingly, and I go on a little bit of a spiel, tell them about the company, what we're trying to achieve, what's our challenges, and then I hand it over to them. What about the introverted customer or prospects who you really as a salesperson have to drive? We've all been in those meetings, Dave, where you go, hi, Dave, how are you doing? Is everything okay? And you go, yep, thank you. Mm-hmm. And you think, oh, this is going to be a hard one. Mm-hmm. Now, the mistake people make, if you agree, is they get flustered by this. They go, oh, this is a professional sales discussion. Panic. Let me go into the pitch.
Pitch.
Whereas if you flip that back on its head, even if it's an introvert who clearly doesn't want to do the small talk and just have a business meeting, ask bloody questions. Because if you then ask questions, they've got to answer. And if you ask closed questions, they can answer with yes or no. If you ask open questions, they will get talking, right? But your 80-20 rule, what I'm saying there, still applies even if you have that tough, awkward meeting with an introvert who is not offering a lot up. Start asking open and probing questions. And so they're still talking 80% of the time. Would you agree? Because I think what throws people in is when you have a professionally focused, introverted customer and we're not getting the dialogue going, we go into the pitch.
Absolutely. Yeah, we just go into overdrive in terms of selling what we're going to sell because I need to fill the space. I don't like these awkward silences, so I'm going to fill the space with something. And it usually comes out as a waffle or a drivel that makes no sense to anybody, really, particularly the introverted customer who's not saying much.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right in terms of asking questions. I mean, again, one of the biggest mysteries to lots of salespeople I still come across is having some kind of pre-planned and basic questioning methodology. So you don't have to fill those empty spaces with blurb and drivel. You can actually ask thought out, planned questions.
Yeah.
And I guess if you want, there could be half a dozen pre-planned questions that are designed to get any customer talking about their business.
Yeah.
And you can have those in your head instead of a well-rehearsed pitch, you know?
Yeah. So I always like the fact of simplifying the questions. And if you think about it, when we do hiring great talent content, Dave, we talk about the 3 types of questions you can ask in an interview, which is behavioral based questions, conceptual based questions, and anxiety questions. Well, I always use the same principle in a slightly different way for sales. There's 3 types of questions you can ask in a sales meeting: an open question, a probing question, or a closed question. So, for example, a closed question is when you're going to get a yes or no answer or a one-word answer. So if I lead off in a sales meeting, for example, and I say to you, the customer, so then, Dave, this year, are you focused on reducing costs? You can go, no, right? You can simply, that's a closed question. I'm asking you a direct question. You can answer yes or no, right? But if I rewind that, let me ask the same type of question, but as an open question. So then, Dave, tell me, what are you working on this year? That's an open question because you now have to tell me the answer.
Absolutely.
Well, actually, Martin, we're focused on revenue generation. We want to double the size of the organization in the next 12 months. It's aggressive, but we think we can do it. And then a probing question follows an open question. So you respond with that answer to my open question. I go, really? So how do you think you can do it, Dave? What's on the agenda? What's part of the strategy? What things are you going to do to achieve doubling the business this year? That's a probing question. All of a sudden, you're now hitting me with all the juicy information that I can gather to start uncovering how I can help you exploit an opportunity or fix a problem. Does that make sense? So salespeople sometimes use too many closed questions and then wonder why they're not making traction with the conversation.
Well, equally so, and I agree with everything you've said, absolutely. But equally so, it's very tempting once you get the customer talking to keep them talking. So question after question after question after question then starts to feel like an interrogation.
Yeah.
So there's a danger there.
Yeah. So if you ask an open question and then you probe and you get an answer, and you probe again and you get an answer, and you probe again and you get an answer, there's a danger that you can be overdoing it and not picking up on what the customer's saying quick enough. Yeah. We always have a bit of a rule, a general rule, Dave, where I think you can ask an open question and get away with maybe 1 or 2 probing and then move on.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think you've got to move on in a different direction rather than just going back and forth, back and forth. So I guess this is one of the things that challenges most salespeople I come across, I guess most frequently. And they're all familiar with asking questions, of course they are, but it's usually open and closed. It doesn't go very far, and so on and so forth. So you're right in what you say in terms of ask a couple of open questions and maybe ask some kind of probing question, start to uncover something new, and then just throw a different type of question in there. So it sounds great. It sounds like you've got a fantastic plan for the next 12 months, Martin. What are your challenges?
Yes. So you've established through opening and probing questions, you've established the customer's trying to double the business over the next 12 months. They've got a plan of action in place. They're going to focus on X, Y, and Z. And you've uncovered that through your open and probing questions. But then you shift direction to go, okay, I get that now. I've written it down in my book. So what are the challenges that will prevent you from achieving that, Dave?
Correct.
We're still progressing the conversation, but it's a second open question, but we've shifted the focus to challenges, not what you focused on, right? You will then start telling me what your challenges are, and I can probe around the challenges.
Correct.
So have you thought about how you're going to overcome them? Are you currently using any other providers? Do you have the expertise in-house, right? I can probe around the challenges. So all of a sudden, in 20 minutes of this meeting, I've got what you're trying to achieve and I've probed around it. I've now got your anticipated challenges and I've probed around them. And now I'm starting to think about how our solution fits. I'm not communicating it yet, but I'm starting for the first time to think where our product or service starts to make, to come into play here.
We're starting to think about where we might be able to help solve their problems.
Yes.
Because as soon as we start talking about challenges, we start understanding where the barriers to those achievements might be.
Yeah.
And hopefully what we do as a product or service might be able to help them overcome those barriers somewhere.
Yeah.
But we won't know unless we ask.
Yeah.
Because it's great knowing about what they're trying to achieve over the next 12 to 24 months. It's great knowing what sort of budgets they've got and so on and so forth. We've got no clue where the challenges are. We've got no clue whether we're going to be able to help or not.
And then after the challenges, it might naturally, organically go into this area. But you can ask a third open question after you've probed a bit, saying, who else is involved in this? Are you working with the finance director and the finance team on this? Have you got a steering committee? Is there a task group? Or have you not got that far, right? So we can start looking at the personnel who's involved and who this project or who this initiative touches internally in the organization. So yeah, your point is open and probing questions is great. Don't ask, if any, don't ever get yourself into a situation where you ask a closed question, apart from the very end of the meeting, where you're asking things like, who's the power, right? Do you have budget, etc., whatever it might be. Okay, so that's I get that. And I think, at what point then, Dave, in your opinion, does the salesperson start to turn the conversation as to what we can do for you? Or do you not even go there? Do you let it?
No, I'm not even there yet. I've still got another layer to go. Yeah.
Go on then. Go on.
So once we start to uncover challenges, we start to uncover what we call the pain points. I think it's really, really important to try and grow that pain and help the customer understand the size of the challenge or the urgency around solving the problem that's going to come off the back of the challenge or whatever it might be. So ask a question, something like, so I understand what you said there, Martin, and that does sound like a challenge. What do you think would happen if you didn't overcome that challenge? And what do you think the knock-on effect would be on the business or the people or the budget or whatever it might be?
And this is in sales. This is in the value selling methodology that I was taught in my first field sales role. This was called anxiety questions. So although it sounds bad that you're inducing anxiety into a prospect, what you're doing there is you're getting them now to think of the consequence of what it means, the implication of what it means not to exploit this opportunity or fix this problem or whatever it might be. Because that then in turn, as we talk about step 6 on our sales work cycle, Dave, that starts to create the compelling reason to buy.
Correct.
When I think of the repercussions of not acting upon this.
Absolutely.
So they are, so we're going open and probing on the mission of discovery, open questions, probing questions, open question, probing questions. And when the time's right, let's just accelerate it a little into an anxiety-based question. What are the potential repercussions of not fixing this or not
absolutely
moving on this? Yeah.
Another question I love as well is when we're dealing with, a specific person, I love a question around what part do you play in all of this?
Yeah. And I always say things like, what would success mean for you personally on this project? Or if you pulled this off or you fix this, what does it mean for you personally? And sometimes they go, well, let's face it, if I deliver this, right, and I deliver it well on time and within budget, my next career move could depend on this.
For me.
And then all of a sudden you've got the personal driver as well as the professional reason.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What's in it for you?
What would happen with you and your role if this failed?
Yeah. Talk about an anxiety question, right?
Well, listen, I can't even talk about that because that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Great. New sense of urgency.
Yeah.
New sense of personal ownership.
Yeah, like that. And that allows you to start establishing the personal buy-in from the buyer as well as the business outcome and the professional reason.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Sure.
Anything else?
I don't know. I guess just to sum it up, really, I've got a few bullet points that are really important for me about a salesperson. And I guess coincidentally, my son is about to go into sales.
Yeah.
is about to go into telesales, which I did advise him to do.
Yeah.
Where he can learn resilience. You know, he can learn what it sounds like and feels like to get a no every time.
Yeah.
And hopefully I'm going to pass some of this knowledge on to him, which is going to help him, you know, I guess, grow in his sales career.
Well, there's no pressure on you, Dave, but if your son starts a career in telesales and his father is a sales guru stroke trainer and he doesn't excel, then the pressure's on both of you on this one, right?
Yeah, if he doesn't succeed, he's moving out. Like ASAP.
Yeah, absolutely.
So a few of my last bullet points, really, and I guess these are the contrary to, I guess, what we normally observe in salespeople, is that for me, a salesperson needs to be really very, very unassuming. We shouldn't ever walk into a meeting or engage with a potential prospect and think we know anything about them.
Yeah,
I don't believe in that stuff.
There's a difference between preparing and having a few and showing you've prepared or you've taken an interest, and then assumption. I think there's a difference between the two.
Absolutely.
There's nothing wrong in showing a little bit that
you've bit of prep.
Looked up on LinkedIn, you've read the company website, you know where they operate,
issues and all that kind of stuff.
But don't over-assume anything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Unassuming for me, and I think discreet is another one. You know, low profile, really. I think a salesperson needs to be the least important person in the room. The customer is the most important person in the room right now. So discreet, genuine is another thing.
Yeah.
Genuinely interested in the customer, their world, and their problems.
Yeah.
Genuinely interested. Transparent, I think, is another thing that we don't often see in salespeople.
Well, listen, I'm going to mention no names, but there was a sales meeting this week, right? Somebody came to see me.
I knew he was going to say that.
They're in a sales meeting with me, and after 30 minutes of dialogue and me trying to work out bloody costs and what this thing meant, etc. It was confusing. Yeah. I asked a question back to the salesperson, who then decided after 30 minutes to respond with, well, listen, Martin, I'm going to be completely honest with you now.
Ouch.
And I thought, so what have you been with me up until this point?
Correct.
And then they hit me with two further costs that had not been discussed so far in the process, which made me believe that if I'd not have asked,
would have told you,
that would have been dropped on last minute. So that's a classic mistake, right? No transparency around things up front, and it only led me to retract from that particular, salesperson.
So just let me add to that as well. This particular person, if it's who I think it was, had a sharp haircut, sharp suit shoes, and a sharp mouth.
And talked about their product and service for the entire 30 minutes.
Walked into the office and made us look at him, and it was all about him, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. So focused on the prospect, 100%, inquisitive about them and their world. Something we talk about all the time in all different scenarios to do with any kind of communication where we're dealing with people is absolutely seek to understand rather than
demand to be understood.
Ask to reply. Yeah, absolutely.
And that's a classic Stephen Covey saying, isn't it? Seek to understand 100%. Before you demand to be understood.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. You've got to ask those questions and understand the answers rather than just prepare an answer that you think is about to come. 80-20 rule, as I've mentioned. And just if you always go into a sales meeting, remembering that it's absolutely about the customer and not about me, I think people will just have a different approach and it will almost ooze out of them. Their interest in the client, the customer, the prospect, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, awesome. Love that, Dave. With a minute left, I think we've just come in on time. Salespeople listening to this, sales managers listening to this, just think about it. Just reflect. We all get a lot of training on our products and services when we join companies. Or I say a lot, some more than others, but we all get trained on how to sell the product. Some organizations are doing a lot more on the methodology of uncovering pain points than others. But just have that general feeling, that general aura about you that it's all about the customer. We need to go on that mission of discovery. We need to ask very few, if any, closed questions. Ask open questions and then proceed to probe 1 or 2 times so you can clarify understanding, so you can dig a bit deeper. Once you've asked a few open and probing questions, move on to a different type of question. What are the challenges around achieving this? Open and probing questions. And then towards the end, the anxiety question, what would be the repercussions or the effect, the impact of not solving this?
Absolutely.
Right. And some of Dave's tips at the end. So Dave, I think that's been useful. I'm sure people get some value from that and just reflect. We will be back as always with more sales content on the hub. And other than that, Dave, I really enjoyed that, mate. And I think it's actionable. And I'm guessing we'll be back shortly with another T2 Hubcast.
Absolutely, we will.
Dave Pendleton, thank you very much.
Thanks so much.